Welcome to Hack the Entrepreneur, the show which reveals the fears, habits, and inner battles behind big-name entrepreneurs and those on their way to joining them. Now here is your host, John Naster.
Hey, this is Hack the Entrepreneur. Thank you so much for joining me again today. Today's episode has a bit of a sound issue. A sound issue actually on my end. I just got to come clean. I totally messed up apparently as recording, and my microphone wasn't set through Skype properly, and it was actually picking up through my laptop. And I didn't know this until long after the call was finished. So I had to debate, should I release it or should I try and re-record it? But the conversation was really, really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And then with editing, we fixed it up as good as we can. But that's why it sounds different. My guest sounds excellent. I sound like I'm speaking through a mic attached to my laptop. They're built in, which I am. And I apologize for that. But it's really good and it's worth it and you'll enjoy it. So let's do it. I'm your host, John Naster, but you can call me Johnny. My guest today is a former digital nomad, writer, podcaster, and a smart entrepreneur. Back in 2007, my guest and his business partner started an e-commerce business. They then spent the next 8 years growing it into a multiple 7-figure per year business until selling it in 2015. In this time, he also started the Dynamite Circle, a private community and forum of lifestyle entrepreneurs, of which I am happy to be a part of. They also host an annual conference in Bangkok called DCBKK. As a podcaster, he is the host of the Tropical MBA show that is now in its 5th season. Now, let's hack Dan Andrews. I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign enables you to send perfectly timed messages in response to your customers' actions and behaviors. It's been proven. Companies using marketing automation see 53% higher conversions than those using traditional, what I call boring email marketing methods. Treat your contacts as unique individuals rather than sending everyone the same boring message. With marketing automation, your campaigns can listen, learn, adapt, and respond, all based on your contacts' behaviors and as their customer profile changes. It's beautiful, it's easy to use, and you don't need to hire consultants because you can set it up for yourself. See why thousands are upgrading to a more intelligent marketing solution. Sign up for a free 14-day trial right now. No credit card needed. Go to activecampaign.com/hack. There's no training fees, there's absolutely no contracts, and pricing is accessible to any business. Plus, there's an absolutely special offer for Hack the Entrepreneur listeners. You can get a free migration service right now. Move all your contacts, lists, templates, anything you want from your old provider. You're going to get your second month of service absolutely for free, no matter what pricing level you decide to take. Plus, there's a free one-on-one strategy session with a platform consultant. You can use this during your free trial to give yourself a jump start. Start marketing smarter today. Get and convert more leads with ActiveCampaign. Go to activecampaign.com/hack right now. We are back with another episode of Hack the Entrepreneur, and today we have a very, very, very special guest. Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
Johnny, it's good to be here, man.
Oh, yeah.
I jumped at the opportunity.
That's cool. I don't actually know why it took me so long to ask you to come on here, but that's how things go. All right, well, let's jump into it.
Sure.
Dan, I know you wear many hats, but today we're talking to Dan, the entrepreneur. So as an entrepreneur, Dan, can you tell me what is the one thing that you do that you feel has been the biggest contributor to your successes so far?
By the way, I appreciate the third guest. What's his or her name?
That's Birdie.
Awesome. He wants to hear an answer too. This question, for some reason, I feel like whatever I'm going to say, I'm going to be wrong. You know, I feel like I'm just asking the karmic gods to.
I really make it emphasize what do you feel has been you can't go wrong. Except for prefacing it with, I'm probably going to be wrong. That's probably the one way you could be wrong.
I kind of feel like I could like go at this 10 different times with equal conviction. So the one thing that like jumped in my head today, I was like surfing around the internet, like looking at a lot of what my friends are doing. And for me, business and entrepreneurship was a need to have. It wasn't a nice to have. Like the position I found myself in life was simply untenable. And that position was like 2-hour commute, 10 hours behind the desk, absolutely broke, in credit card debt, with no ability to control where my physical presence was. And I had come from a background where I had a lot of my high school friends were wealthier. I don't know how that came about. I think because I liked books as a kid and I just kind of fell into that crowd, and like they were traveling around. They had like these cool jobs. They went to good colleges. And I was kind of there at the desk. And I had all those memories of, I knew it was possible for people to live like that. I just didn't know, sort of what I was going to do to get there, because I didn't have those more traditional avenues. Like they weren't working out for me, like I couldn't get into a good college and et cetera. So I think it was that like I was in so much like existential pain behind that desk by like year 3 that I just was going to explode. I was going to go absolutely crazy unless I did something.
Wow. So it's like that whole back against the wall. Well, it's different actually than back against the wall, because lots of people, I think, get into that position and just let it sort of just push them and weigh them down, and just, you know what I mean? And just run them down until the point of just, this is what it is. This is how my life played out.
Yeah. And you don't hear the stories of the people who got crushed against the wall, which
right.
is, and that happens to so many of us. So
how did you like, where did you like sort of pull from inside of you to be like, this isn't just how, it's not just my lot in life to do this. Well, like everybody in your office is probably feeling the same thing. You're probably not the only one.
Probably because I was like maybe less of a pragmatist and more of a true believer.
Nice.
And so there was this moment I remember, like when my faith was broken, so to speak. And that was more or less when I started making 6 figures. Like I got the big raise. And it was like through this amazing year of business, we had like doubled the company. I was the VP. It was a very small company, but we were growing our headcount. Like I was hiring people that were older than me, that were making more than me. Boss pulls me into the office and is like, it's your time, young Padawan. Here's the big salary. Let's go do this thing. And it was almost like, because I had fulfilled, like ticked all the boxes, It was funny because like I remember meeting people like while I was in that position, and I was like, yeah, I'm the VP of blah, blah, blah at this company. And like, wow, like people were like, holy crap, dude, you're 26. And then 1 year later, after I made the entrepreneurial switch, being in a similar room and having people have that kind of humiliated look about what I was doing, running a small cat furniture company on the internet, living in my girlfriend's house or whatever. But yeah, I think I got the opportunity to get to the logical end of what I thought was going to give me what I wanted, and I realized that I had nothing that I wanted. And so, yeah, this is kind of like blind faith, I think, for a lot of young people, that if I can just get a great job and make 6 figures, then that's it, right? You're going to be good. And I was there and I was like, it's the most cliched thing in the world, right? But it took me to be in that position to be like, which is a shame, because I should have figured those things out earlier. And that's why I encourage so many of our listeners to do exercises like Tim Ferriss's Dreamline, because it's amazingly effective just to like write down exactly what you want. And it's like, had I done that when I was 23, I would have realized that the path I was on wasn't ultimately going to deliver those things that I wanted. There's an important caveat there, though, that because I was in a position where I got to, manage over 10 people, like move around hundreds of thousands of dollars, deal with multinational clients, I was playing and learning with other people's money. And what I see with a lot of people that are a little bit younger, they go directly into the internet business game in the last 5 years. Things are at such a smaller scale. They're so much easier to get started. Sometimes they lack that experience of like dealing with difficult clients, of, completing projects that under timeframes you never thought you'd be able to do. So I think that experience obviously ultimately benefited me, but it was, also I guess it's just part of my journey. I'm trying to make sense of it in retrospect, but
it's exactly. It makes more sense usually than going through it, but it doesn't necessarily make sense. But I fully agree with the idea of like learning within somebody else's company and learning with their money. And I think just even learning how, especially a fast growing company maybe functions or dysfunctions from within is really crucial sometimes when you're trying to then do it yourself.
Yeah, well, let me say something specific to that. I was reading an article you recently wrote, and it was about this kind of procrastination learning thing that we often find ourselves doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I firmly believe that entrepreneurship is a lot more know-how than know that. Like, it's a way of behaving. It's more like riding a bike. You can't read a book about how to ride a bike. Like, you can get some tips and pointers, but ultimately you have to get on the bike and go. And working for somebody else that's like, there's this kind of like magical size of company, like you have to work directly with the founder. It can't be too big. It can't be too small. Like maybe like 10 to 15 employees is a really sweet spot. If you can come in and be the right hand, it's almost like jumping on a bike that's already moving. This might be too wonky, but a fixed gear bike. Imagine a fixed gear bike going downhill. You got to jump on it and start moving your feet at that speed. And all of a sudden you can start to get it. And I noticed there's a correlation across a lot of my peers that have had that experience working in small enterprise. They like understand, they have that know-how.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that was really, really important for me.
Yeah. So the fixed gear bike, that totally makes sense. I actually just wrote an article yesterday that had the merry-go-round as the analogy or metaphor, but it's like the same thing, right? When that thing's moving and you're trying to get on with your friends who are also there, it's like you don't stand still and then just try and jump into business. You kind of have to just get going, start running, and then hopefully somebody will grab you and pull you up. But because I think we see like, oh, well, you're helping your friends and blah, blah, blah. All these people just help each other with it's like, because we're running businesses. We're doing things, and so you help each other doing it, but you don't really, it's hard to help that person who's literally stuck in that desk job that you had 10 hours a day and just wants to get out but doesn't want to do anything to help themselves.
Absolutely. Like I always say, like networking is a multiplier. So if you're at 0, then there's no number you can connect it with. Like you could run into the most successful business person who like really enjoys mentoring people and stuff, and they wouldn't ultimately mentor you because you have no personal direction yourself, So that's really critical as well, I think, for sure.
So you had this like breakthrough, and then past that 6-figure mark, you had that sort of early on, and I think you called it a breakthrough. And to me, that seems sort of like a mindset sort of breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
Have any of these occurred to you within the entrepreneurship space since then?
Well, so immediately after, the way I responded to that breakthrough was by doing that dreamlining exercise, which is essentially like saying, like taking back, like instead of outsourcing what it is you really want. And you can even do that as an entrepreneur, right? Like you can get involved in a certain community, whether that's like, you could go read about digital nomads. You can be like, oh, I want to baseline in Thailand for 6 months, or you could get involved in a startup scene and you could be like, I want to move to whatever. Like forget about all that junk, sit down and like write down what your thing is. Because part of the cool thing about our community is you're going to meet people that are doing it their way, like they've taken that in-house, so to speak, and they've like written down, I don't want to manage more than 5 employees. Like I want to work on this type of industry. I want to have these sorts of products. And you can make that stuff all work, if you're willing to do it. So that I think was a big breakthrough moment to me, just like saying like, look, it was just like this moment of freedom. It really felt good. Like I kind of like got my life back a little bit, because there's this period of life for young people, it's like you go to high school. At the time I sort of hated it all, but I didn't really know what I hated about it, but it's like, I didn't really make a decision about what I did or where I was really for like 18 years. And that includes like up until I was 26. Like I kissed somebody's ass, I begged them for a job. And once they, said yes, I thanked them and then did exactly what they said with the vast majority of my time and thoughts. It's kind of crazy, And so it was like that breaking of the faith that like, I'd rather just sleep on my mom's couch than do any of all that, I know a lot of people just aren't in a position to think like that. I was lucky enough to be in a position where, I'm just broke anyway.
So whatever.
And also like just also just kind of that breaking of the faith is really important too, in terms of like what your prestige triggers are. So like those things are really important depending on your personality, like what you respect in other people and like what you find valuable. And I guess I did respect like people who had great jobs and like went to great schools. And I think I got to that point where I was like, man, none of this matters at all. Like, I just don't care. I just don't care where somebody went to school. I don't care what their job is. It's just, I'm over it, you know? And that was a really important moment for me. And that's when I just started saying, what do you really want, man? And you just write these small little ambitions on a piece of paper. And you're like, you know what? Maybe I can do that.
Do you still do this now? Do you know what you really want, Dan?
Yeah. I think one of the purity of that exercise at that time was that I didn't have responsibilities. Responsibilities are a whole nother thing, you know? And I had vague ideas like I want to get rich and take care of my family kind of ideas, but that's like 15 years off. That's not like 15 days. I got to pay the rent, put my kid in clothes,
Yeah.
So I think I do know some of the things that I want now, but also I have a lot of responsibilities. So, that was important to do that in my 20s. I think it would be different now as someone in their mid 30s.
So the responsibilities sort of need to keep you in line, or do they push you harder to attain the richness for your family?
That's a good question. It could go both ways. Like sometimes it's just a job.
Yeah.
Like that's the reality of a lot of small businesses. They're just jobs. At the beginning, they're fun, they're exciting, but you got to go to work. And if you want to keep them running and keep them healthy, you got to work hard at it, and it's like, you're doing it with your podcast, I do it with mine. Like, after this call, I got an 1.5-hour call. I do it every single week. I'm on it for an 1.5 hours. I get a bunch of homework from my team that I got to go do, and I just got to go do it. Some days it's fun, sometimes it's not. But I think there's value in that too. When you're young, everything's like you're ambitious and you think you're going to double every year, and maybe you will. But also once you kind of get lift off and you have a team and they depend on you, then and you have a family, they depend on you. I think a handful of lawyers that depend on me at this point. Stuff like that, like there's a certain point in like your e-commerce business when you open up a warehouse and like someone's going to come knocking on your door and say, hey buddy, you need insurance, And those are things that it's easy to forget, like in your first 2 or 3 years of business, that you need insurance probably. And you probably need a lawyer to look over the insurance contract.
Right. It's not just cash coming in the door that you can spend on the backside.
Sure.
All right. So this is, I think, where we're going to go to sort of projects. And so it's this idea of projects, which can be big or small, but I feel like you are from our conversation before, at an interesting place, similar to where I'm sort of at, where you've ran businesses in the past. You still run business now. The business is really around a podcast. And obviously the Dynamite Circle as well, which is like a group of people, a mastermind of people, I guess you would call it.
Sure.
Hundreds of them that do pay you. But I think that you and your business partner, Ian, have talked about how 2016, you didn't necessarily build a new quote unquote business. You've built software before, sold it successfully, all those things. And I get the feeling that you have this urge to build something new. So let's talk about it. It's February now. You guys have 10 months to start building something that you want to build.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the process start? And then where is it at? But where does the process start? Because there's ideas everywhere, possibly, but not necessarily good ones. But how are you guys sort of sifting through ideas to determine a project that's worth your time, energy, and resources?
Right. Well, that's almost more like an investor's sort of approach, because I think one of the interesting things if you really want to build something, it's more a matter of looking at where you want to spend your time, because it's hard to like say in advance, like this is what it's going to be. It's about like really like putting on the surgical gloves and opening up the hood and getting your hands dirty, So I think that's how we approach these conversations. Like, we can allocate money or hire somebody for this or whatever. But the more interesting conversations between Ian and myself is like, what do we want to work on together? What do we want to talk about on the phone every single day? That's like a decent heuristic. Like, do we want to get on the phone and talk about this energetically for 30 minutes a day? Just for a little background, we exited a business, and on my own podcast, I've mentioned this ad nauseum, we've exited a business in 2015. And I think it's fair to say that like 2016 was a bit of a holy shit, that just happened year. You know, that business had over 15 employees. It was something that we had been building since like that first breaking faith day when I was like, no way, I'm going to do something of my own. Like that was what we did. And like we worked every day, like tired. That was what we did every day for, you know, the majority of a decade, and we sold it. And yeah, and it was just a strange year, I think, for us, because like your whole identity, your whole like work life is just kind of somebody else owns it now. It's gone. You know, I'm trying to.
What business was that?
It was an e-commerce business that sold valet podiums, portable cocktail bars, and famously, at least amongst our tiny corner of the internet, high-end cat furniture, which was originally designed for Ian's cat, who has quite an attitude. So yeah, like, you know, that's originally like, I think maybe if you Google around, I look like this palm tree traveling guy, but I originally moved to Vietnam and the Philippines in order to hire Drupal developers, because you couldn't just have like Shopify or WooCommerce back then. And if you wanted to have any kind of sophistication in your e-commerce shopping cart, and we did. So like if you buy a valet podium, Johnny, like I want to make sure you buy an umbrella with that valet part. I want to suggest that to you, you know, and all those things didn't exist in affordable e-commerce platforms. And developers in California were like 80 grand a year. And we were just like completely hustling this thing together. So I was like listening to some podcasts, one in particular called Internet Business Mastery. And there was this guy on that one episode called John Jonas. And I think he still might be around. I think it's fair to say that like John Jonas is like the hardest sales dude of all time. That guy will get on there and be like, you need a Filipino VA to solve all your problems. And I was just like, you know what? Maybe he's right. So I got on a plane. I didn't buy his program. I just went on a plane. Yeah, I started hiring some Drupal developers. Actually, ultimately ended up working out for us. But that was the moment that I was like, you know, this is interesting. And I'll start blogging about this. I'll start podcasting about what we're doing. That's how the community started. And we kind of found this quirky little subset of entrepreneurs who were building businesses this way. But all the while, you know, our day jobs, so to speak, were that e-commerce business. You know, we had we have an office in California, a warehouse in California, a lot of moving pieces there. So that's more or less what supplied us with the content for the show for so long. And then last year it was all gone. And like Ian built a house, and like I started riding my bike like a maniac, and you know, I think we were having like a midlife crisis or something. And we ended up hiring a producer for our show. And because we didn't have anything to talk about anymore, you know, we're just out of, there's no business here. There's nothing to talk about. So we got a producer, and we started finding ways and techniques to like interview people. So like what you do, it's not easy. It's really hard, actually.
There's a lot to it. I think if it's good for people to listen to, then it's hard to do, but you make it sound easy.
It is hard.
I think is the trick. Your producer I met her in Barcelona, and yeah, she knows what she's doing.
She does.
She'll whip you guys into shape.
She did. Yeah. It's an awesome move.
So this year then, are you talking more than of an investment sort of move, or do you want to fill that sort of quote unquote void that's there now in your lives?
I think, no, we do want to fill it. And I think we're actively working on it right now. And for us, the path is not, I think, diversifying, but just going deeper. And for us, that's into the community. There is so much business activity happening in that community that we are not involved in a meaningful way. You know, there's so many people making investments, making partnerships. There's people launching new products in there. And we haven't really been a part of that with our members. And so I think that if Ian and I can find coordinated ways to focus more on the DC together, because, you know, one of the things is that Ian was the CEO of this other company. So now we have to integrate him into this new company that he was only just a tangential part of in the past. Like he was our Ringer keynote speaker. He was a podcast guest, but it was a whole other team of people that were running the Dynamite Circle. And so I think this year is the year of like bringing our new owner or founder back into the fray and doubling down on the community. And that's the plan.
Nice.
So
I like it.
What does that mean initially? I mean, so for DCers, we facilitate mastermind hookups. Like if you're a DCer, you can email us at any time and we'll like let you know about mastermind availability, like whether you can join a podcasters or whatever kind of SaaS founder entrepreneur meetup that you want to, or a mastermind rather, that you want to be a part of. Well, I think this started to be a turnoff for our podcast listeners actually, because they're like, well, the requirement to join the DC is such that I'm a huge fan and I have a business and you won't let me in. And so we thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to do a similar facilitation for people that aren't yet in the DC. Because I do think it's equally valuable, but there's some differences in the way you would approach a mastermind if you don't have a team of staff yet. So yeah, that's something that we're working on, and we're launching probably February 21st.
Wow.
So that's just one example of us. I think there's just so much potential in there. We're throwing an event this summer. We're going to continue to grow DCBKK, which is our flagship product. And yeah, so that's kind of the plan for this year. Our membership continues to grow. So I just think it's a great opportunity. And, I meet so many smart DCers, and I'm like not this kind of deal cutter guy. I'm kind of like a hatch a plan guy. I'm like, hey, let's all go here with our backpacks and talk about business around a fireplace or something. But I'm a little bit less of like, hey, why don't we build this thing together? And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for that if I just open up my eyes and stay focused.
I like it. So let's just clarify a couple things for people who don't know. DCBKK is your main conference, which is Dynamite Circle Bangkok.
That's right.
Hence the BKK. Because I know people are like, what is he talking about at this point? So on February 21st, you're launching something sort of external of the DC?
That's right.
Okay. And then the DC, you mentioned quickly, like, that I listen to your show and I do all this stuff, but you won't let me in. Why won't you let people into DC?
Well, so part of the reason I want to create this public-facing mastermind product is, like I said before, I think entrepreneurship is a know-how. It's not a know that. And I think masterminding with people in a similar trajectory as you is one of those ways you can kind of get yourself on that fixie bike. You can get yourself in the process of actually doing entrepreneurship, taking hard feedback, collaborating with people, things like that. So the idea of the mastermind product is that's for people that have sold their first product online, but don't have 6 figures of revenue. The idea of the DC is really to like find those unique entrepreneurs that have made this location independent thing work at some kind of scale. And so that's really the 6-figure product. And then, so I'm imagining like the 37 Signals 3-part sales page now. Really, the third step on our ladder is we do occasionally host events for 7-figure and millionaire entrepreneurs. It sounds cheesy to say it out loud, but it's true. It's like those people have different sets of concerns than people that are making $200,000 a year and have 3 employees.
Right.
It's just a different set of concerns. If you've been in business for 7 years, your business is mature and you have 10 employees. It's a different, I've been to both meetups and they're just very, very different. So that's kind of, and it's the same is true of like, if you're trying to sell 15 sales a month, your concerns are so very different from somebody who's got 4 employees and they're full-time, it's just, so that's kind of one of the things that we're innovating on the community is really saying like, there's 3 different groups here and they have 3 different sets of concerns. And how can we do a better job at helping them out? I mean, a lot of the people, like you said, like they've been listening to our show for like 5 years. They know we've got this community and it doesn't help them at all because they're not in it, And so I think that's by getting Ian on board, his energy, his passion for it, and saying, well, let's help these people out. Why not? We got some energy for this. So that's just Q1.
I love it. To me, that's pretty serious clarity. Sort of like siloing them off into 3 different communities so that they can all serve their purpose better than one sort of jumbled community.
I can tell you one of the mindset blocks I think that we had, maybe like if you would have asked me last year, I wouldn't have been so clear. And it's easy to think you're a hot shot, or that something's not good enough for you. If you start with how much money am I going to make? So if you ask me like, well, how much money am I going to make off this? I don't think it's going to be that much necessarily. And I think this is a challenge it's a weird challenge for somebody who's been through a few businesses, you know? Because what you start to do then is say, oh, that's not good enough for me. That's not really up to my standard or whatever. I think for us, we had to take like a cool down period and say like, let's do something really modest. Like just focus on, again, what do we want to actually do? What would be fun? And that's been useful for us rather than like judging everything like an investor. Like, is that really worth my time? You know, like those sorts of calculations. This is like, hey, we can actually have an effect here. We can do a good job on this. Let's do it. Let's see how it goes. So that was useful for us.
That is. And I mean, I guess that whole having that year extra to you call it a midlife crisis, but to enjoy yourselves and do things externally, I think gives you that space. And you're in a great place where you have that space to sort of approach it in that different way. But again, that's oftentimes really hard when you're just trying to get out of that 10-hour-a-day office job that you hate, to be like, well, what do I want to do that makes a difference? It's like, the difference I want is I don't want to be here for 10 hours a day and have to commute for 2 hours. That's the difference.
Exactly. Yeah, man, it's a really hard position to be in. And I think for me, it's finding ways to get in the game, you know? And so if we're going to stick with the fixie metaphor while we're at it, if you're sitting in an office all day long around people who don't have businesses, and that's where the majority of your energy is going, you know, that's going to be tough. I have this thesis that says, just from observing this across like really thousands of people over a decade, is that I think it takes about 3 years of full-time effort. There's tons of exceptions to that, but I think that's about what it takes to kind of recreate your corporate income with entrepreneurship. And even then, you're going to have new sorts of stresses and challenges that are not, you know, being in the corporate world sucks in certain ways, but it's great in other ways because you don't have to worry about a lot of things that entrepreneurs end up worrying about. And some people, they come over to the entrepreneurship world, they see all the stuff we're talking about on our shows, and they're like, hey, man, this kind of sucks for me. Well, wouldn't it suck if you're in that corporate job trying to do something on the side for like 5 years and all of a sudden, you know, you manage to get out of it a little bit and you show up at one of these conferences and you realize like, man, all these people are douchebags, or I don't like this at all, or I'm stressed out now all the time. I can't like stop looking at my phone at 8 p.m. anymore. So I really appreciated going to a job and having other people take care of that for me. And then I get to focus on my family, or I get to focus on my hobbies. So if you meet a lot of entrepreneurs, you'll notice that their hobby is their business, and that's what they do. So my point is if you think you might want to do this stuff, and we're talking about a lifetime career here, I would suggest finding any way to get yourself there now, like yesterday. And maybe the easiest way is if you have a corporate skill set, take a pay cut and go work for a small company in your industry and work directly with the business owner and really get to know, like, that's the office you want to hold someday. Is that office everything you dreamed it was going to be? And hear the real story, because you're not going to be able to really feel it just by listening to pods or reading. Because of course the benefits are great on paper. Make 6 figures of passive income annually. Check. Awesome. Live anywhere I want. Check. Awesome. Right. But you might not want that lifestyle, which is a crazy thing to say. You might not want it at all. And so I think getting in as soon as you can, like, that's the hack to all this stuff. And if taking pay cut is nothing, you know, like if you look at it over the terms of like decades, which is really what you're talking about when you talk about a career, it's nothing to take yourself down a few pegs, you know, don't get the cool new clothes, eat rice and beans, whatever, and figure out, you know, whether that's a real thing for you. I guess that's my advice.
I like it. And
by the way, so now I'll pitch my mastermind product, Johnny.
all right, let's do it.
I think that's a way that you can kind of do that a little bit without taking any big career risks. Okay. You know, you're not willing to, you know, quit your job, go work for a smaller company, move your house or whatever, or you don't want to go live in Chiang Mai for 6 months to like figure out what internet marketers are doing there, you know, go to Austin, or there are all these places around the world where these people gather. Maybe you get yourself in a mastermind and like stop going to the gym half the time or whatever it's going to take for you to be able to put some energy into that lifestyle and see whether it's a good fit.
I like it. So this is where you're going to tell us where we can find it?
Tropical MBA.
Or you said pitch. You said you're going to pitch it, but you sold us on it. But
yeah, so I'll be sending. I'll be pitching it to the email subscribers at tropicalmba.com.
Okay, so Tropical MBA is also the podcast. If people don't know, they can check you out there.
Sure.
And they can get on that email list.
Yeah.
And that's where they'll find out about this in another week or so.
Absolutely.
I love it. I will link to that in the show notes for you, as well as the Dynamite Circle. You can check it out, what we've been talking about. And I'm going to track down this Tim Ferriss's Dreamline, because it's been mentioned throughout this conversation.
Yeah, and I've also made an upgraded and improved Tim Ferriss Dreamline. So
on the blog.
I think I called it like Dreamline 2.0. I can send you the link, but it's a spreadsheet that people can download. It has some nuances changed. You asked me earlier, like this is kind of strange to say, but I think in some ways my legacy on the internet is really been having been the Tim Ferriss guinea pig. Because when Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-Hour Workweek, he kind of like dropped it on the world and then he took off. And so like I basically did everything he said in that book, and I figured out like what worked, what didn't, and then I tried to improve on everything in it in my own like very small ways. So I always say like I'm kind of like the worksheets of the 4-Hour Workweek. Like the 4-Hour Workweek's like the Bible or whatever, and I'm like the Sunday school afterwards. Like let's implement some of this stuff, So I think it's fascinating. You look like 10 years later, like that book I think had a big impact. It really did, and what the implications of the book. The book didn't see all of them. There's things that have turned out much different than I think the way Tim envisioned it. And I think in many ways he predicted the future. So I think that book is really fascinating.
It is really fascinating. How come he disappeared like that? Like what was with that?
I think because he was at the sort of the end of his entrepreneurial journey. Like he wanted to do other things. He had an exit, he had made his money, he had been living that lifestyle for 5 years. And I think that was when he started moving on to more fitness or investing oriented goals. So he started hanging out in Silicon Valley. I don't know him personally, but you could see that he was very focused on technology, startups, making those sorts of investments. And he had written this book that was like the bootstrapper's Bible, basically, And so he automatically found himself in a much different community than he was sort of the Pied Piper for. So there was this gap, And here were Ian and I, like these two e-commerce guys, kind of rednecky, like physical goods people who were like, you know what? We're not going to sell information products. We're going to try to like sell our cat furniture, but using this Tim Ferriss model where we like optimize globally, we travel, we do mini retirements, all these sorts of concepts he talks about. And it ended up working out for us and for thousands of others. So that's basically the story of our show is like, let's see if this Tim Ferriss thing can work for us. And in some ways it really did. In some ways we found ways to tweak it.
Excellent. And we can find that on the blog, I'm assuming, at Tropical MBA. So Dreamline 2.0, you will give me a link to that and I will share it with you out there listening. So when you are done working, jogging, running, walking your dog, whatever it is you're doing right now, those will be over at the site at hacktheentrepreneur.com.
Cool.
All right, Dan. Twitter, you are at Dan Andrews.
Tropical MBA.
Tropical MBA.
That's my home on the web.
Excellent. So at Tropical MBA, if you want to follow up with any questions, you can find Dan over there. He's quite active. He's always there. And yeah, man, it's been fun. Thanks so much for finally joining me. Thanks for sharing so openly, and just keep doing what you're doing.
My pleasure.
I've been sending email marketing messages for almost 7 years now. But just like in the normal way, send out a broadcast, set up an autoresponder maybe. And I've wanted to try marketing automation for quite a few years, but it seemed daunting. Either there was huge upfront costs or else the technical side, which I am not a technical person, was just too overwhelming. Luckily, I discovered ActiveCampaign. See why thousands are upgrading to a more intelligent marketing solution. Sign up right now for a free 14-day trial, no credit card needed. Go to activecampaign.com/hack. That's activecampaign.com/hack. All right, well, Dan, besides my technical error with the microphone, that was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed that. I'm glad we got to sit down and talk business. It's always enlightening to get to sit down with you. You're a smart dude who's done a lot of cool stuff. And I just really, really am glad we got the chance to do that. So now we've reached the point in the show where I need to go back. I need to go back and listen to it as you got to listen to it out there. So I did. So I went back through the conversation and listened. Then I went back through the conversation and I listened again. Then I went back one more time and I listened again. And that third time through the conversation, there was something I had missed the first 2 times, but it was so very, very clear to me this time. It was that one thing that Dan said. Did you get it? Did you hear it? Let's do it. Let's find the hack.
If you really want to build something, it's more a matter of looking at where you want to spend your time. You know, because that it's hard to like say in advance, like this is what it's going to be.
And that's the hack. Dan. This is awesome. If you really want to build something, it's more a matter of looking at where you want to spend your time. So this is such a simple yet completely different sort of angle or perspective to look at creating a business, right? It's not about the product. It's not about the service. It's not about the who or the what. It's literally, where do you want to spend your time? Because it's going to take you years. It's going to take you a year or 2 or 3 years. They spent like 8 years in their first e-commerce business before selling it. Anything that you want to build that is worth building is going to take you years to build. So you have to know where you want to spend your time. Because as Dan finishes with, is you have no idea what it's going to be, right? From standing still, trying to guess that this is the business I want to make. Businesses evolve and change. I mean, no business kind of survives its sort of first year of interaction or first 5 years of interaction with the marketplace and with actual customers. Things evolve and change. They have to, because we can't from standing still know what it is going to be. So as Dan says, we have to just think about what it is we want to spend our time on. And this isn't just because he's sold a business for lots of money and can do this. This is literally how you should be approaching the market or the business that you want to start. First, think about where you want to spend your time, and then think about how you can get customers within that space. Because nothing you start is going to take off within the next 6 months or year or 2. Not that you can't make money while doing it, but everything takes time that is worth doing. So don't start something just for the money or just because you think you see where the product can go. Start it because it's where you want to spend your time, and you can imagine yourself talking about it for the next year or 2 or 3 years with somebody or with your team every single day. Dan, thank you so very much. Well, that was a lot of fun. I'm glad we got through the issues, the audio issues together. I apologize. I take full responsibility for it, and I have a procedure now in place to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But we survived. HackTheEntrepreneur.com is the website. Stop by and check out Dan's show notes. There's some good links. I'll link to his blog, his podcast. I will track down the Dynamite Circle for you, see if you're a good fit over there, and then everything else we kind of talked about today on the show. Yeah, it's a fun place, to hang out over there. All right, it's been fun. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for stopping by. I truly, truly appreciate it. And please, until next time, keep hacking the entrepreneur.